Hello, everybody. Scott Griffin here with Tide and Tiger and my friend Rodney Orr of Tider Insider with a preview look at Bama and Colorado State. Rodney, how are you?
I'm doing great, Scott. How are you?
We're doing wonderfully. Just give me a brief first, right out of the gate, off the top of your mind about this game.
Well, I think, obviously, to me, it's another really big opportunity for Alabama because, again, you're still working with a lot of new faces on the defensive side of the ball, guys having to fill in for the injured players. I think that's a great opportunity to continue to develop some of these younger players. And not only that, I think there's some younger players on the defensive line, for example, who have been counted on and will be counted on. Raekwon Davis, Quentin Williams, Isaiah Buggs. All of those guys are young players that don't have a lot of experience, and I think this is another opportunity for them to grow. I think on the offensive side, I think you're still trying to find, who you are. You're still trying to develop your offensive line, get consistent there. They worked several different combinations on the right side of the offensive line this week in practice. Some of that was due to Lester Cotton, the starting right guard, being out a little bit. He was dinged up in the Fresno State game. So all of those things I think are really important in this game to try to make a next step because, Scott, this team has to be developed. There's a lot of young players. I've said before, I think 1 to 85, this may be as talented as a group of athletes as Alabama's had under Nick Saban. But I've also said, it's a lot of inexperience.
Yeah.
And then even with that, now you've had the injuries, and it even kind of complicates things a little bit more. So I think this team is a team that's being developed and kind of a work in progress, and this is a great opportunity for them to take another step.
Yeah, specifically, because you talk kind of in general a little bit, specifically, I want to see Levi Wallace and Trayvon Diggs both get better on that left corner. I think you're going to need both for the end of the year, and we all know how sometimes 6 guys come in and you can cover slots and different things like that. Also, I'm still looking for Jalen Hurts to take that next step. He took one last week, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But that next step where that ball comes out quicker, that the ball is more accurate like it was last Saturday as he still develops his downfield passing. So we'll get into that and more as we go. So this podcast, Tide and Tiger, the preview of the Colorado State game, brought to you by InnovateAthlete.com. Innovate, that's with INNOV, the number 8, athlete.com. You can go there. You can type in the code GRIFF and get the best supplements on the planet. I'm talking about protein, amino acids, pre-workout, post-workout, everything you need, fully tested by the World Anti-Doping Association, and it is top-notch. So check it out. Innovate, INNOV, 8athlete.com. Type in the code GRIFF, and you will save a 10% off your order. Be sure you check out InnovateAthlete.com. All right, let's start with offensively. Then we'll get into Colorado State and who they are. But this is another week where Alabama needs to focus on Alabama, although Colorado State is a lot better team than Fresno State.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And, I thought Fresno State obviously extremely well coached. Jeff Tedford did an outstanding job at Cal when he was the head coach there, and I thought he put them in really good position last week with the way the things they were doing on offense and so forth. And and again, I think this week kind of the same thing. Mike Bobo, a lot of experience, the former offensive coordinator under Mark Richt at Georgia, and of course was a former quarterback at Georgia. So he has SEC experience. He knows what it's like. He knows what the competition is. He's been there before on this kind of a stage, so to speak. And then also Will Friend, the former Alabama offensive lineman, is now the offensive coordinator there at Colorado State under Mike Bobo. They've done an excellent job. Listen, they've had 3 games. They're 2-1 so far. They handled Oregon State in their opener pretty well. And they've also beaten Abilene Christian, a former NAIA school out in Texas. Is a really small school, so you really can't get much out of that in terms of a gauge. But they played Colorado, which played in the Pac-12 championship game last year against Washington, and played them fairly respectably. It was a 17-3 game, and Colorado's had a pretty good offense, and but Colorado State struggled to generate much offense, obviously. So it's a good team. They have a quarterback, Nick Stevens. He's very capable. He's already thrown for almost 1,000 yards. He has 6 touchdowns He has thrown 4 interceptions. Michael Gallup is a junior college transfer wide receiver that they've got that's putting up some really good numbers. They've got an excellent running game. They're really well balanced. They have over 500 yards average per game on offense, Scott. They're averaging 33 points, giving up 18. So they're kind of getting the corner turned a little bit since the transition from Jim McElwain to Mike Bobo. They kind of took a little dip, but I think Bobo's kind of got them headed back in the right direction.
No doubt. And Nick Stevens leads America in passing yardage, not Shea Patterson. Patterson's second. We know he went crazy last week, and they're playing California. But Stevens is number 1 in America in passing yards. He can move the football, and they're up tempo.
He's, like as I said, he's thrown for 980. Now, he has played in 3 games. Again, and you look at Shea Patterson, for example, they've only had 2 games, so he does have a little bit of an advantage there. But, this Stevens kid can really, deliver the football. Again, Mike Bobo, a former quarterback himself, has a great offensive mind. So it's kind of for a quarterback, it's a good situation to be in, good offense. It's friendly for a quarterback. And, that's going to challenge the Alabama secondary. But not only that, I do think it's an opportunity for Alabama's pass rush. I'm going to be interested to watch that part of it. And let's say this about the Fresno State game, Scott. I've seen a lot of complaints or questioning, what have you, about the defensive performance and no pass rush. Well, first of all, as I said earlier, Jeff Tedford did an excellent job game planning for that with the things that they do, get the ball out of the quarterback's hand very quickly. It almost negates a pass rush. So that's one thing. But another thing, too, is with all the injuries, Jeremy Pruitt last week went plain vanilla defensively. There was nothing fancy. There wasn't the blitzing that you saw against Florida State, none of those things. And then naturally the intensity did drop off. You see that on occasion after a big opener like Alabama had with Florida State, where the game 2 against a quote-unquote lesser-name opponent, and you don't quite bring the same intensity. Whether that's right or wrong or whatever, you're trying to play to a standard. I know that's what Nick Saban preaches, but it does happen. And, it's hard to fight against.
No doubt about it. And even a guy like Jamie Mosley, he's like a freshman. He hasn't played a lot.
Absolutely.
And he played well. I thought Chris Allen played well. As you talked about, we've had inside linebackers get injured there for Alabama. So I don't think Jeremy Pruitt had a choice but to water it down, keep it simple, not let guys just fly to the football, and just get the game experience of reading the play and making a tackle. Keep it simple.
That's what he did, kind of utilize their athletic ability a little bit more where they don't have to think as much. And I think that was, obviously part of the plan. We saw some guys that, like you said, had never played before. Chris Allen, the true freshman out of Baton Rouge, outside linebacker. At inside linebacker, Josh McMillan would be an example of a guy who's not played hardly any. He's not a freshman, but he certainly has played very, very little in terms of at the linebacker spot. So tons of inexperience that was out there last Saturday defensively, and going to be really interesting to see the Alabama defense in this particular game, as well as you mentioned, Scott, the offense and the things that they need to do.
No doubt about it. And look, Colorado State is one of 9 bowl teams. 9. That's the 3rd most in the country Alabama will face this year. So, I think the line's 28.5. I think if you're really thinking, this is going to be blowout city, it could be, but I'm not expecting that. I don't know what you're expecting.
No. Well, I picked on Tighter Insider TV on Tuesday night. I picked it a 38-13 game. So it's it's a game that I think could be competitive for a while. And it was a few years ago, you remember, in 2013, I believe it was, when Jim McElwain brought his team here at Colorado State, and they it was a very competitive game going into the 4th quarter.
There's no doubt about it. Let's hear from some of the players on the heels of the Fresno State game and getting ready for Colorado State. Their thoughts.
The more playmakers that we have on offense, the better for us, and the more versatile it makes us. So, I'm happy for Jalen and happy for the offensive line. I think second play, he busted a big run for a touchdown, so that was a good way to start off the game and get us off the field quick, and felt good. But we tried to keep it rolling, and every time we got the ball, we wanted to score.
You're not just practicing to make yourself look good. You're practicing to get ready to play. So, with football, you never know what's going to happen. One play, you think you're the 3rd string, and then 2 plays later, you're out there playing. So you have to be ready. Like you said, Jamie said, next man up. That's the motto that you have to keep. That's what's going to make you a better football player overall.
We got players on the team that didn't have major roles last year stepping in major roles now. So that's been an obstacle. So, but as the week goes, they taking on and getting better every day.
I think they did pretty well for being like the first time out there. A lot of new faces. They did pretty well. Communicated across the board. Everybody communicated and played hard.
That's Ross Pierce-Baker, Keith Holcomb, Cam Sims, and Anthony Averett, the cornerback, speaking about the team there. Let's go to offense now, because everybody loves talking about Jalen Hurts. I've been not critical of him. I don't like to look at it that way. I just point out things he could do better. And this is let's start right there, Rodney. When we talk about Jalen Hurts and what he could do better, he realizes it as much as anybody. The coaching staff realizes it. We're not on the kid's back. We're just talking about him becoming the player he can be.
And I think that's what most people, even fans for the most part, I think when they're, kind of critiquing him, which is part of it. It's part of the game. I mean, there's not been a quarterback that's come through here at Alabama that hasn't been critiqued. And it's one of the most difficult positions, I think, to play in all of sports, is be the quarterback at Alabama, because you are under such scrutiny. So this is really nothing new at all. And I don't think it's so much criticism of him. It's just saying, listen, here are the facts. In their last 5 games, and I'm talking about the big name opponents, would be Florida, Washington, Clemson, and then Florida State in the opener. Alabama's averaged just over 100 yards a game passing, completed only 49% of its passes, only 3 touchdowns. Now the positive thing is no interceptions. But at the same time, those numbers are not really the numbers you're looking for when you're talking about evaluating a passing game. You certainly want to complete a much higher percentage, closer to 60% for a lot more yards, and hopefully be more productive in terms of producing touchdowns. So I don't think that's a criticism. That's just talking about pointing out an area that really needs to improve, because you are going to play some games against some very outstanding defenses where you're going to need the passing game to be a key part of what you're trying to do, so you can be successful. And again, I don't think that the passing game to this point, in terms of evaluating those last several games against top-notch opponents, is something that, Nick Saban himself would probably say are winning numbers, so to speak. Now, people say, well, they won all those games except the Clemson game. Fact, that is true. But at the same time.
But you don't want to bank on that, right? You don't want to bank on that every week, right?
Absolutely. And defenses now are playing Jalen Hurts as a runner. So what they're doing is they're stacking 8 in the box. They can take chances against Alabama's running game. They can take chances and say, hey, listen, we're going to shut down the run. We're going to sell out to shut down the run. We don't believe that we can be beaten, through the air. So again, that's just an area that you need to make people respect what you can do. And guess what? If Hurts continues to develop as he showed last week, took a step, if he can continue to take the next step and become a legitimate, consistent passing threat, then all of a sudden defenses have to respect that. And what happens is the Bo Scarboroughs, Najee Harris, Damian Harris, Josh Jacobs, all those guys, and all your other weapons, how do you defend them all? Then it becomes a quandary for the defense. And that's where you want to do. You want to put the pressure on the defense.
Here's what Nick Saban had to say about the quarterback play and downfield throwing improving.
You can go through all the quarterbacks that we've had since we've been here, and if you just take the last 3 years, they're all relatively different. But we had to build what we had around them based on what they could do. But they all had good enough talent in what they could do that we had pretty productive offense and scored a lot of points. So we've done the same thing with Jalen, and hopefully he'll continue to improve in some of the areas that will help him be more complete, but also will continue to take advantage of the things that he does well.
And again, the numbers don't lie. Jalen Hurts this year, that's a small sample, Rodney, 2 of 10 for any ball that's traveling over 10 yards. They need to be at least 50%, 40 to 50% on that.
Yeah, obviously that's something that they're working on, hoping to improve. Now, I will say this too. I think it's Brian Dable, the new offensive coordinator. There are some new things. Obviously, you have to get on the same page. I think they're trying to do that. And again, it's not just Jalen Hurts. Let's be honest. I said this early. If the offensive line doesn't give him protection, then it makes it really difficult for him to go through his progressions, find guys that are open. Then he has to fall back on his legs and utilize those a lot more often maybe than you would like. So I think it's really important that Alabama's offensive line take the next step as well. They've got to get the right side shored up, figure out what the combination is that works the best, and then hopefully develop and become a really outstanding offensive line that can get a push in the run game but also protect the quarterback.
And here's the exciting thing for Alabama fans. Jalen Hurts is already 10th all-time in the Tide's career touchdown responsibility. 10th. He's got 40. If he has one, he'll tie Greg McElroy at 9th. If he has two, he'll tie Walter Lewis at number 8. If he has 3, he ties Trent Richardson. So you get the idea. A.J. McCarron's number 1 with 80. But Jalen Hurts is halfway there with 1 year and 2 games under his belt. Think about that.
Yeah, extremely productive. I think last year he had, 21 touchdown passes? Maybe it was 23. Off the top of my head, it was either one of those two. But, obviously was very successful running the ball. He's very productive. And then that is one thing about Jalen Hurts. He is productive in terms of putting up some numbers and, had an all-time season last year, put up over 3,700 yards of offense, was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. All of those things are certainly, you just don't see a true freshman do those types of things at the quarterback position very often, especially in the SEC. And at Alabama, obviously, had never been done. So, kudos to him for what he does and how productive he has been. But, again, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to point out an area that needs to be improved.
Yeah, and against good teams. 23 touchdowns, by the way. You were right the first time. 13 running, so 36, a new single-season record, if I'm not mistaken, for the Crimson Tide in that department. So that's Nick Saban on the quarterback play. Now, the guys protect him. You said that works hand in hand with it. Matt Womack was pretty close, probably closer than people thought, of maybe losing his starting job. I don't think the battle's over, but he did win SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week against Fresno State. He didn't allow a sack or quarterback hurry, and he was not penalized. He was graded 90%. He really took a strong step. And look, Jedrick Wills came in there and played well the times I saw him, Rodney, but it was good to see Womack there playing too.
Yeah, I think Womack in his first game against Florida State, wow, you have to open against guys like that are really athletic, coming off the edge very fast. That was a real challenge for him. And, being his first game and all of that. And I thought at times he struggled in that game. He looked a little slow at times. But, again, you have to consider the overall circumstances. And I thought he rebounded really well against Fresno State. Obviously, as you mentioned, SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. And Jedrick Wills, the true freshman from Lexington, Kentucky, got in the game early on and did an outstanding job. He had a couple of really great blocks. I know he had a good block on Damian Harris's touchdown run. So he's got a tremendous amount of potential. Then in this week's practices on Monday, with Lester Cotton being dinged, he did not practice on Monday. They slid Womack inside the guard, and we saw Jedrick Wills out at right tackle. So that combination got worked this week. We do know that for sure. We also know that Josh Casher, who's worked some with that first group up front at the right guard spot in place of Cotton. He played some in the Fresno State game at that spot. He also worked at the right guard spot with Womack sliding back out to right tackle. So they're trying to find the right combination, Scott, to get the offensive line cohesive. And this is one thing about these early season games. We've seen it before where they use them as opportunities to kind of experiment and find, which guys are best for them. And, I go back to last year. Lester Cotton started several games at the right guard spot, and then all of a sudden, mid-year or so, Corin Curvin, the senior, got that spot and never relinquished it. He took it over. And so just to think that there could be a possible change in personnel up front, I don't think that's necessarily out of the question.
Yeah, it's a fluid situation, but they're going to need depth. I mean, you always got to have depth on the offensive line. It's the most under-talked about position where guys can get injured, I think, on the football field, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that 100% because you lose a guy, if you don't have guys that have been getting reps in terms of some game reps, it can be really difficult because the one thing about an offensive line, it's a cohesive unit. And if there's one breakdown, it's like all five have broken down. So it's very important that they're all on the same page.
No doubt about it. Tide and Tiger here. Scott Griffin and Tider Insiders Rodney Orr previewing Bama against Colorado State. And just generally speaking, again, this is all about Bama and this kind of game, although Colorado State is a bowl team from last year and a very dangerous team with the nation's number one quarterback in throwing the football. Alabama throwing the football. We saw in game one, Calvin Ridley have a nice day, at least from number of catches, and then some backs, and that was it. Well, this time, Irv Smith got in on the action. Hale Hinges got in on the action. Back still caught balls. Jerry Jeudy caught balls. So the distribution was better.
Yeah, Robert Foster had a couple of catches as well, which was good to see. The senior, he's really waited his turn. So, after he had the injury a couple of years ago, it set him back. But I think as we continue to move along and everyone becomes more comfortable and acclimated with what they're trying to do, then I think you'll see on a more consistent basis the diversity, the spreading the ball around, however you want to phrase it. I think also with getting Josh Jacobs back soon at running back, he's a guy that figures really big because they'll move him around a lot. I think he'll play in the slot some, be utilized as a receiver. So I think that we'll see more of the diversity.
When you say that, I think you mean I want people to get a complete layout of this. I foresee him being in the backfield, then going to slot. You're talking about motion out there, right? A lot of the time.
Right. Whether he motions out, lines up there, he can do it all.
Yeah.
However they want to do it. And he's really good at coming out of the backfield, flaring out of the backfield as a receiver too. So he's just so versatile. And not only that, he's such a dangerous runner and brings a little bit of a different look. He's kind of a combination guy. He's got speed, he's got power, he's got quickness, he's got really great cutting ability. I mean, so I'm really looking forward to Josh Jacobs getting back in the mix, and I think that'll help. But also we've talked about the tight ends. We've talked about the wide receivers, getting more of those guys involved. At one point last week, you looked out there, and I'm talking about early in the game too. You had three true freshmen on the field at wide receiver.
Right.
Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, and Jerry Jeudy. That I haven't seen that ever at Alabama under Nick Saban, where you've had three true freshmen on the field at wide receiver that I recall, that early in a game. So all of those guys, outstanding players, I think we'll start seeing more utilization of all the weapons that they have as they continue to get more and more comfortable.
There's no doubt about it. And Nick Saban is he proved last year with Jalen Hurts. He's not afraid to play a freshman. He's not afraid to play a walk-on like Levi Wallace. You earn your stripes, you'll be in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Levi Wallace is a great example of that. He had a tremendous game against Florida State coming off the bench. I thought he shut down that left side of the field, having he and Trevon Diggs. I think Levi Wallace, for one thing, allows Trevon Diggs to kind of, come and grow into this slowly, this move to corner. Even though he was a corner in high school, he played multiple positions in high school. But it does allow Trevon Diggs, it takes a little pressure off him, I think, allow them to develop him a little bit more in the secondary. So this week should be really interesting because, again, you mentioned Nick Stevens, a very prolific passer there for Colorado State, and they're going to try to challenge those corners.
No doubt about it. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting. And Nick Saban has some interesting thoughts on how he recruits the best players to fit the system. Now, this was originally a quarterback question. Give me a thought on that before we hear from Nick Saban from your perspective as this was asked this week.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting question, actually, because it wasn't specific to Alabama's quarterbacking situation. It was just basically as an NFL coach or an NFL organization, they draft quarterbacks and they consider them franchise-type players, and they want to build their offensive program around those players for several years versus in college, you're changing every couple of years. How do you do that? How do you recruit players at the quarterback position? And I thought Nick Saban had a really interesting answer.
Let's hear from Nick Saban and what he had to say.
Try to focus on what a player can do, not what he can't do. And if that guy has special talents in some area, I think those things are going to be beneficial to our team and his contribution to the team in the future. So once you get those guys, you sort of do what they can do.
You certainly get guys to fit a system. I think he keeps it kind of like his offensive and defensive philosophy, Rodney. He keeps it multiple. You want to get guys to fit your system, but you also don't, not look at terrific athletes as well. Anthony Averett, a perfect example. We talked about him last week. An offensive player in high school, they saw the capabilities and hip flexibilities and speed and all the things you look for in a cornerback. Now he's going to be one of the first defensive backs taken probably in this year's draft. So they kind of do all-encompassing when they're looking at players.
Right. And I think at the quarterback position specifically, if you look at them, obviously they went from A.J. McCarron, who is a drop-back passer, certainly not a runner at all, but, a guy that stood in the pocket. And then in 2014, they had Blake Sims, who is a very athletic guy, could play multiple positions, but he had the ability to throw the football as well. So he would move around. He could scramble. He could make plays with his feet, but he could also, again, make the throws that you needed him to make. And then the next year they go back to a guy who is clearly a better athlete than McCarron in terms of being able to run the ball, big, strong, physical guy in Jake Coker, but he was a pocket passer. He was like McCarron in that regard, but could break out and run, was kind of more of a power-type runner. But and then last year, they go with a true freshman, Jalen Hurts, who is a guy that was zone read option type guy, but does have a strong arm, could make plays with his feet, keeping plays alive, extending them, and making throws on the run, so to speak. So the point is they've won with a variety of styles, and they've kind of cut what they do in a pattern that fits what the quarterback can do well. And that's one of the strengths I think Nick Saban has, is the ability and the flexibility to do that.
Well, just look at the last couple of years. They get Jalen Hurts, who I think, wasn't it Bo Davis that was on him and had to get them to convince them to take him? And they took him, and then he wins the starting quarterback job because of his Texas connections. Then you get a guy that you think is a little McCarron out of Jacksonville, Florida, right, in Mac Jones. And then you throw in a Tua Tagovailoa who can run a little bit, but he's not a runner like Jalen, but can really throw. He's kind of a mixture of all of them. So you got a whole metamorphosis just on this team right now.
Yeah. You have Jalen, who probably his strength starts with his legs, and then Tua Tagovailoa is certainly a very polished passer, a guy that was brought up in the passing system. His head coach, Cal Lee, out in Hawaii, was formerly the offensive coordinator under June Jones at Hawaii. And you know what kind of numbers they put up out there.
Oh, crazy.
Timmy Chang, all the quarterbacks that they've had that have been very successful. What was the guy's name? Colt, that they had a few years ago back in 2006. I forgot his last name.
Colt Brennan.
He was also
Colt Brennan.
Colt Brennan. Colt Brennan, exactly. He put up some prolific numbers. So, Tua came up in that system. So he feels really comfortable. It's natural to him to stand back there in the pocket and deliver the ball.
No doubt about it. All right, so we've got some recruiting news coming on. What can you tell us about Alabama recruiting? Because a lot of people are concerned that there's some big names that are still out there, still have Alabama there, but, they're not allowing to where they're going.
Yeah, I think Alabama's going to be fine in recruiting. I know a lot of fans were impatient back in the summer, but, Scott, we said, Cider and Cider, I said back last February that this was going to be a much slower process, and it has been. And I think today Alabama will pick up a big commitment. I really like Vernon Jackson out of Bowling, Texas. He's a tremendous athlete. He's a guy that plays quarterback, plays some defense. He's 6'2", 240. He runs really, really well. Obviously not going to be a quarterback in college. But, the Beckwith kid, Kendall Beckwith, that was at LSU, that was so good here over the last several years for them at linebacker. He was a high school quarterback. Kind of reminds me a lot of Vernon Jackson. So I think he could make the transition to defense really, really well. When he does play defense, he's very good when you watch his tape. But I think he can make that transition easily. He's so athletic, has good hands. He could also play H-back, could play a variety of positions. So we'll see how that would shake out. But I think he picks Alabama over Texas A&M and TCU, and probably maybe by the time some people are listening to this, that decision's already been announced.
All right, we'll look for that. Anybody impactful coming this weekend? It's kind of early in the high school season before guys. I know there'll be some guys, but not really the impactful big guys for the big games that we normally expect.
Right. And I think you'll have a lot of the in-state guys possibly will show up. And, I will say this, too. I would like to mention, obviously, that Alabama has a big need recruiting defensive backs. I think eventually here pretty soon they're going to get a commitment from Nadab Joseph out of Hialeah, Florida, who is one of the top defensive backs, in my opinion, in the country. He's so versatile. He was originally committed to LSU. He backed off that commitment a month or so ago, came to Alabama's camp back in the summer, and he showed a lot of versatility to play either safety or corner, legitimately could play corner. He's a guy, Scott, that I think would be a huge pickup for this class because, again, I think, defensive back is a prime need. They're in on several other guys, Tyson Campbell, Patrick Surtain, Josh Jobe. Those guys could all play corner, the corner position. Surtain, some people think, is the best corner in the country. So they're in on some really top guys at that position, and I think as we move along, they're going to do extremely well. Once again, Alabama's going to have an outstanding class.
Of course, you can find the best recruiting information, real recruiting information, on TighterInsider.com with Rodney. Or tell people how they can get in on that site.
Yeah, it's TighterInsider.com, Scott. It's only $48 a year. You can get instant access with your credit card, or if you prefer, you can send a check. It gives you access to all our premium information, as well as the information on the forum, where it's a constant flow and exchange of opinions, ideas, thoughts, college football information of all kinds. It never nothing can happen in college football without it slipping past somebody on TighterInsider.com. And again, it's only $48 a year. And if our listeners want to lurk, they can certainly go there for free and look at some of the video, listen to our podcast, and all of those things.
All right, great stuff there. Tighter Insider and Tide and Tiger. Don't forget about it on the podbean.com channel, Tide and Tiger, and also YouTube. We have all the practice video, practice updates, Nick Saban, Rodney and I's practice reports, and much more. For Rodney Orr, this is Scott Griffin saying so long. We'll see you after the game right here on Tide and Tiger and TighterInsider.com.